Well, Lord George Robertson is in Washington now. Well, first of all, George Robertson, Nicola Sturgeon, I don't know if you could hear her there, but she says she finds some of the comments in your speech deeply insulting. What would you say to her?
I would say to her, why doesn't she focus on the arguments I deployed instead of simply slagging me off? This is all too common a phenomenon in this debate, for the nationalists to say that people are being offensive and scaremongering or blustering, when in fact they don't address the questions, the very, very important questions that are being raised. Do they seriously think that Scotland could secede from the United Kingdom and break up Britain without anybody in the outside world noticing? Do they really seriously believe that the breakup of Britain would add to the solidarity and solidity of the West at a very, very dangerous time for the world? Do they think that we're in a bubble that nobody is going to care?
What exactly are these arguments? I mean, look, let's take your maximalist argument, which is that by getting rid of Trident, Scotland could potentially force the whole of the UK to get rid of nuclear weapons, because the rest of the UK wouldn't have anywhere to put them. I can see how that would be very disruptive for UK defence, and it might be very disruptive for NATO. Cataclysmic for the Western world. How on earth do you arrive at that conclusion?
Well, if you look up the word cataclysm in the dictionary, then you'll see that it says an event that has major repercussions and change. So I didn't use that word lightly, and I didn't use it without checking what it actually meant. You know, the fact is, it's not just the question about Trident, and it's not just the question about the inability to join NATO when you lay down conditions that might make it completely difficult to do so. It's the fact that the second military power in the West would break in two and would be engaged for at least 2 and maybe many more years in very debilitating negotiations about the breakup of the North Sea assets, of national debt, of currency.
But why if I'm in Germany or France or anywhere else? Why if I'm in Germany or France or the United States or anywhere else in what you call the West, should I consider that cataclysmic, even if we accept your new definition of cataclysmic as a bit important?
It's not a bit important, it would be of huge importance, and I'm not the only one who thinks that or says that. The breakup of the United Kingdom at this time of all times, in a very fragile, complicated and unstable world, would have dramatic implications for the solidity and the stability of the West in general. And I can't see why people won't argue about that. Do these people who are simply mouthing off terms of abuse seriously imagine that the breakup of Britain could be accompanied by nobody really noticing or caring in the outside world?
Well, I don't think anyone is saying that no one would notice.
That's the question that should be answered.
But it's not. I'm asking you what your argument is. I mean, if you take flashpoints around the world, some of the ones you mentioned when you were talking at the Brookings, the situation in Ukraine and Russia, the situation in the East China Sea, the various disputes going on there, it's not entirely clear why should it be the case that Britain had to get rid of its nuclear weapons, and should it be the case that Scotland had to reapply to join NATO, that would have any bearing on anything that's going on in these places?
Well, it would have a big impact on the standing and the solidarity of the countries. If you look at the countries, basically, of the West, you have the United States, you have France, you have Germany and the United Kingdom. These are the major powers. Then in the United Nations Security Council, they have major roles in NATO and the European Union. If one of these countries then has a secession that takes away a third of its landmass, 10% of its GNP, 5 million of its population, and puts into question the deterrent, which is part and parcel of NATO's nuclear alliance, then that is bound to have implications in the rest of the world. And I'm merely drawing attention to that.
Yes, but again, no one is saying that there are no implications, or that no one else has noticed. But that's very far from saying it's cataclysmic. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think an independent Scotland would be accepted as a member of NATO?
and it might be eventually, but I think they've laid down conditions. This particular Scottish government, in its white paper, is laying down conditions that I think would make it very difficult for NATO to accept it. You know, Nicola Sturgeon mentions Norway and Denmark as being countries that don't have nuclear weapons, but they are countries that accept the nuclear umbrella. They accept the strategic concept of NATO, which says explicitly that so long as nuclear weapons exist, NATO will be a nuclear alliance. So there's a difference between non-nuclear nations and the Scottish government's view that it would be an anti-nuclear nation.
Who are these?
That would make it very difficult for other countries to accept it.
Who are these forces of darkness who would allegedly celebrate the breakup of the United Kingdom?
Well, it doesn't require huge imagination to see that in the world today we are affected by forces and challenges and threats outside of our country. Al-Qaeda and its like in the world and other things, other challenges as well, require a degree of concentration, a degree of effort and a degree of unity in the Western world if we're going to be able to confront them in the future.
So, sorry, are you seriously saying that it's beyond the capabilities of Britain, whether Scotland is part of it or not, to concentrate on negotiating in a democratic way, if there is a yes vote, on the structures of an independent Scotland and the rest of the UK, and simultaneously keep up its defences against organisations like Al-Qaeda? I mean, that just doesn't seem to make much sense.
It's going to be a huge distraction if the United Kingdom breaks in two and we start unpicking the British Armed Forces, the British intelligence services, the whole structure that we have at the present moment, which contributes to the safety and security that we enjoy in the world today. Nobody can pretend that this is a small thing. The breakup of Britain is a big, big thing. And people I know recognise that fact. And all I'm doing with the background of the experience that I've had as Defence Secretary of the UK and as Secretary General of the NATO is drawing the attention of the Scottish people to the fact that there are huge implications of the vote on September the 18th, and they have to be borne in mind.
All right, look, George Robertson, thank you very much indeed. Now, the Royal Society of